Good afternoon, and thanks to all of you for being here, for joining us today for this hearing of the Joint Economic Committee. The American economy is thriving. The current economic expansion is the longest in U.S. history. Our unemployment rate has remained below 4% over the last 18 months. In recent years, we've seen consistently solid GDP growth and growth in job creation. And yet, notwithstanding these successes, for many parents across this country, raising a family has become harder and more expensive than ever before. The New York Times, in fact, recently reported that based on the surveyed adults between the ages of 20 to 45 who were parents or who planned to be, they discovered some interesting trends. 1 in 4 had fewer children or expected that during their lifetimes they would have fewer children than they considered to be within the range of ideal. Economic concerns were foremost among the reasons that they either fell short or believed that in the future they would fall short of what they considered ideal. Over the past few years, the Joint Economic Committee's Social Capital Project has been documenting trends in what we refer to as our associational life as Americans. That is, the web of social relationships through which we as Americans pursue various endeavors, our families, our communities, our friendships, our religious congregations, for example. A critical source of meaning and social capital is, of course, the family. In fact, it is the central set of headwaters for social connectedness generally. That's why 2 of the project's main policy objectives are making it more affordable to raise a family and increasing the number of children who are raised by happily married parents. The goals of today's hearing are to examine factors affecting family affordability and to explore policy approaches that might allow for more Americans to start and to raise the families that they desire. Increasingly, family affordability has become a unifying concern among lawmakers and policymakers and commentators of both the political right and of the political left and everything in between. Even we hear it even in discussions around topics that are as varied as the child tax credit, as declining fertility rates, increases in the cost of child care and of housing, paid family leave, and student debt burdens. Motivating all these discussions is a simple statement. It should not be this hard to raise a family. The problem is, of course, multifaceted. It is complex. It's difficult to unravel and to understand completely. Economic challenges such as debt loads and increases in the cost of living make family formation and expansion difficult for many Americans. Even many families that are economically stable have to deal with the challenges of balancing work and family. Parents want to afford the best neighborhoods and schools for their children, but that often leads to too little time to spend with them, less time at least than they would prefer. As more families have sent 2 earners into the workforce, employers have been slow to accommodate their desire for work-life balance. Meanwhile, Americans who might prefer something closer to a single breadwinner family face prices for housing and other expenses that are bid up by dual-earner households, and the growing ranks of single parents are hampered by their correspondingly high poverty rates. The answer to how did we get here is complicated. Our first step must be to adequately diagnose the problems facing our families. What fuels the rising costs of health care, of child care, of education, and of housing? How many people are hindered in family formation and expansion by excessive student loan debt, inadequate income, or poor employment prospects? To what extent does declining fertility reflect changing preferences, economic barriers, or other factors? And does the rise of the dual-earner family signal increasing hardship or simply changing values? The next step must be to come up with some solutions. What's the best way to help more families afford time out of the workforce to care for newborns? Are there ways to increase work-family flexibility that are minimally disruptive to employers and less likely than others to discourage job creation? Are the government policies that unintentionally have contributed to increases in the cost of housing, of higher education, and health care, which of those can be reformed? How can we make the tax code fairer to parents who bear the costs of supporting future generations of Americans? How is it that we can make sure that we have the workforce and the taxpayer base necessary to fund not only the programs of today, but the programs of 20, 30, 40 years from now? Our panelists today will discuss some of these topics and more. I look forward to their testimonies and to a productive conversation aimed at helping parents and strengthening our families.